Subscribe, and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from.
The disappearance of NASA's documents related to the 1975 Project Asteroid-11 remains one of the most obscure anomalies in early asteroid research. Officially, the project concerned routine orbital tracking and composition studies of near-Earth objects using experimental long baseline arrays. Unofficially, former engineers described it as the first attempt to catalog asteroids that behaved in ways inconsistent with natural celestial mechanics. The project files, stored across several data vaults and magnetic tape archives in Pasadena and Huntsville, were reported missing during a scheduled audit in late 1979. NASA attributed the loss to internal mismanagement, but multiple technicians insisted that the documents had been deliberately removed within a single night by individuals with temporary clearance codes that did not match any logged personnel. Years later, testimony began to leak from a handful of retired propulsion and guidance specialists who worked on the project. They claimed Asteroid-11, designated AE-11 Delta, had demonstrated hyperregular orbital correction, changing its trajectory in clean, deterministic bursts rather than the chaotic micro-variations caused by solar radiation, micro-impacts, or thermal drift. One engineer described it as moving to correctly, as if following a predetermined route rather than being pushed around by physics. The team allegedly recorded 3 such adjustments in 1970 for 1975, with the final one shifting the object into a near-circular path that no natural asteroid of comparable mass had ever been observed taking. According to an internal memo that surfaced years later in heavily redacted form, Project Asteroid-11 was placed under review by an undisclosed defense liaison, after which all research notes, observation reels, and instrument logs were sealed for reassessment. Within months, every document associated with the project vanished, including backup tapes normally immune to deletion because they were stored off-site. Employees who attempted to raise concerns received formal warnings or quiet reassignments. The official position remains that Asteroid-11 never showed anomalous behavior, and that the missing data were the result of clerical error. Yet the surviving witness accounts and timeline inconsistencies suggest a coordinated effort to bury the project entirely, leaving modern analysts with scattered fragments of testimony, conflicting reports, and an object whose final confirmed trajectory ends abruptly in mid-1975. As investigators revisited the scattered testimonies surrounding Project Asteroid-11, a strange pattern began to take shape. Nearly every surviving engineer agreed that the anomaly was not the object itself, but the way the agency reacted to it. One technician recalled a sudden influx of unfamiliar personnel wearing no mission patches and carrying portable data copiers that were not standard NASA equipment in 1975. These individuals reportedly entered the data wing after midnight, escorted by 2 administrators who appeared visibly nervous. The technician claimed he was ordered to leave the building immediately despite being assigned to the night shift. The following morning, the entire lower archive was sealed with yellow partitions, and the staff was informed that a chemical spill had occurred, though no cleanup teams were present. Another account came from a tracking specialist, who described a meeting held in a small conference room near Building 1404. There, a military liaison presented classified photographs of the asteroid's final maneuver. According to his retelling, the images showed a faint, structured halo around the object, geometric and angular rather than dust-like. The liaison allegedly referred to it as an energy signature inconsistent with inert mass, a phrase that stunned the researchers in attendance. He then instructed them to sign new non-disclosure forms that referenced statutes the group had never encountered. Days later, their access to project terminals was revoked. Soon after, an internal bulletin listed Project Asteroid-11 as concluded, despite several datasets still pending review. When staff protested, the project supervisor insisted that the asteroid had simply drifted beyond instrument range, and no further investigation was required. Yet radio logs show that tracking equipment remained fully operational for months, suggesting the asteroid's disappearance was due to intentional data suppression rather than observational limits. Years afterward, a retired administrator confessed that she witnessed shipments of sealed crates, leaving the complex under military escort, bound for an unknown location. She claimed the crates contained raw magnetic tapes from the AE-11 Delta observation periods, though no shipping records have ever surfaced. The deeper one digs into the testimonies, the clearer it becomes that multiple layers of bureaucracy converge to erase not only the data, but the very existence of the project, leaving behind nothing but fragments of fear and silence. In the years that followed, independent astronomers, attempted to reconstruct the trajectory of Asteroid 11, using surviving public fMRIs. Their analyses produced results that only deepened the mystery. For 3 consecutive months in 1975, the object exhibited motion so mathematically precise that it bordered on artificial navigation. Instead of responding to gravitational perturbations from nearby bodies, AE-11 Delta corrected its course by minute increments, as though guided by an internal calibration system. Despite this, NASA's public logs from the same period contained no references to such adjustments and, instead, listed the object's motion as nominal. The contradiction fueled speculation that the agency tampered with published data after the project was closed. In 1982, a former orbital mechanics analyst anonymously mailed a set of photocopies to an astronomy department in Arizona. These documents, though grainy and partially illegible, appeared to be original computation sheets from the 1975 tracking campaign. The calculations, handwritten with notations in the margins, clearly charted a series of abrupt velocity changes inconsistent with natural forces. Some notations included cryptic questions like, "Why synchronous?" and "Pattern repeats at 51 hours." The analyst claimed that the copies were made minutes before the data were seized by officials he did not recognize. The authenticity of these sheets is still disputed, but forensic reviewers confirmed the paper type and ink consistency matched NASA archives from the mid-70s. Another key detail emerged from a former technician who worked on the data receivers. He recalled that during one of the asteroid's correction bursts, the signal produced an audio artifact, a rhythmic, pulsing tone not typical of standard telemetry fluctuations. He described it as mechanical breathing, repeating every 2 seconds before fading as the asteroid stabilized its new trajectory. His supervisor dismissed the anomaly, but within days the technician's access was revoked and he was reassigned to a non-research post. Similar stories appeared across departments: sudden reassignments, data terminals cleared, and conversations cut short when certain keywords were mentioned. The shared trauma across these accounts suggests a coordinated suppression far beyond standard protocol. If the analysts are correct, the asteroid was following a deliberate path rather than drifting through gravitational chaos. What intelligence or mechanism guided it, and why it deserves such extreme secrecy, remain the unanswered questions overshadowing the project. The most chilling testimony came from a systems engineer who worked on a classified parallel program, evaluating potential threats from unidentified orbital objects. In a rare interview decades later, he claimed that in late 1975 he reviewed an image enhancement of AE-11 Delta's final sighting before all data vanished. According to him, the object was not merely a rocky mass but contained a smooth, reflective indentation along its equator, too symmetrical to be natural erosion. He estimated the structure extended several meters and maintained an almost perfect oval geometry. When he presented the observation to his supervisor, he was told the feature was an imaging artifact caused by sensor noise. Yet the engineer insisted that the file metadata showed no anomalies, and that the enhanced frames had undergone multiple verification checks before the meeting. He left the building for lunch and returned to find the entire image directory removed from the server. The next day, he was informed that his contract would not be renewed. Around the same time, a rumor circulated among junior researchers about a closed-door meeting between NASA officials and representatives from an agency whose acronym no one recognized. The meeting allegedly concerned the potential reclassification of AE-11 as a defense-sensitive object. After this meeting, all references to Project Asteroid-11 vanished from internal servers. Even the cafeteria bulletin board notice requesting volunteers for the project's night shift was removed. Attempts to reconstruct these digital deletions revealed that entire storage sectors had been overwritten with blank filler files, an extremely unusual and deliberate process. An internal memo from 1979, discovered years later, included a single surviving sentence: Observation 7 remains incompatible with natural models. Recommend transfer. The memo bore no signatures. The possibility that AE-11 was under intelligent control, either by unknown technology or by an unknown process, was never stated directly, but it haunted the researchers who had glimpsed its behavior. The engineer who viewed the enhanced image later said he believed the asteroid was not an asteroid at all, but a vessel so degraded or disguised that its true nature was beyond our detection capabilities. Whether metaphor or literal suspicion, his words echo the unspoken consensus among the remaining witnesses. Asteroid-11 was something outside the boundaries of mid-20th century astronomy, and someone made certain the world would never know. In 1991, long after Project Asteroid-11 had faded into obscurity, a private aerospace archivist uncovered a damaged microfilm roll mislabeled as weather telemetry. When examined under enhanced magnification, several frames revealed timestamps identical to the final observation period of AE-11 Delta. Most frames were blank, degraded by heat exposure, but a handful contained faint traces of plotted signal intensity. These plotted peaks formed repeating intervals that correlated perfectly with the mechanical breathing tones reported by the technician years earlier. The archivist attempted to publish a small summary in an academic bulletin, but the submission was rejected within 48 hours with an explanation that the data lacked verifiable provenance. Within a week, 2 men posing as federal auditors arrived at his storage facility, asking specifically for reels dated between August and November 1975. He complied, noting nothing unusual at first, but later discovered that the microfilm cabinets had been rearranged, and one additional reel, containing unrelated meteorological data, had also been removed. The pattern echoed decades of selective erasure, always precise, always silent, always aimed at restoring the official narrative that AE-11 Delta had been an ordinary asteroid lost to observational decay. Meanwhile, a researcher specializing in orbital anomalies compared the surviving data with modeled trajectories of inert near-Earth objects. His findings revealed that to achieve the recorded course corrections, the object would have required an internal system capable of adjusting velocity in increments as small as 0.02 meters per second, impossibly delicate for natural fragmentation or gravitational slingshot effects. More disturbing was the discovery that AE-11 Delta appeared to synchronize its rotation with Earth's orbital period at one point, matching a resonance pattern used in certain types of controlled satellite stabilization. The researcher attempted to contact retired NASA personnel for clarification, but the few who responded were terse, warning him not to dig around a project that was shut for a reason. What reason? No one ever clarified. The archivist who found the microfilm later reported an anonymous phone call advising him to avoid pursuing artifacts outside his license. He swore the caller knew details about his storage layout that were never made public. As the surviving scraps of data continued to shrink under pressure, a troubling hypothesis emerged among independent analysts. If AE-11 Delta was a vessel, or an instrument, with controlled motion, it may have been monitoring Earth rather than merely passing it. And if that were the case, then the suppression was not about hiding a mistake, but about preventing humanity from recognizing an encounter it was not prepared to understand. The missing logs from the 1975 Command Wing became a focal point of renewed investigation in the early 2000s. When a retired communications coordinator anonymously released partial transcripts he claimed were copied from a secure terminal just before its decommissioning. These transcripts described an unexpected return signal during the final tracking session. The signal, encoded in a narrow frequency band, allegedly contained structured intervals resembling binary gating rather than random cosmic noise. The coordinator recalled that the decoding team had extracted a pattern of repeating sequences which, when plotted visually, formed symmetrical pulses reminiscent of engineered communication bursts. However, before the team could conduct a second pass, senior officials arrived and terminated the session under a protocol number the coordinator did not recognize. He later discovered that the entire team had been reassigned within a week. The transcripts ended abruptly with a chilling line, receiving repetition of sequence 4. Interpretation pending, awaiting clearance. If authentic, these lines suggest that AE-11 Delta may have transmitted something, information, telemetry, or perhaps a response to Earth-based tracking. One astrophysicist proposed that the pulses resembled an automated handshake, similar to those used in deep space probes to verify identity when contacted. Yet there was no record of any follow-up analysis. When investigative journalists attempted to corroborate the transcripts, they encountered stone-walled responses from agencies supposedly involved. Even the building where the signal was monitored had undergone renovations that removed all evidence of the original equipment layout. A former security contractor later claimed that during the final months of the project, several sealed orders were issued instructing personnel to treat any anomalous data from AE-11 Delta as non-actionable. The term implied that even if the object demonstrated behavior inconsistent with known physics, staff were to disregard it and continue logging the asteroid as inert. The coordinator who leaked the transcripts vanished from public view shortly after. His personal website went offline, his forwarding address was invalid, and even the journalist who interviewed him lost all means of contact. Whether he disappeared voluntarily or was pressured into silence remains unknown, but his documents added one final thread to the growing tapestry of contradictions, suggesting that the object may have reached out, or reacted, to Earth's observation before vanishing. leaving behind only the suppressed echoes of a signal no one was allowed to analyze. By the late 2010s, digital archaeologists launched a project to recover deleted NASA systems from aging backup drives sold at surplus auctions. Hidden among corrupted partitions, they located fragments of a text file labeled A11_Delta_Review_Prelim. The fragments were incomplete, riddled with missing characters, but enough survived to reconstruct several alarming sentences. One-line read: Object's energy signature inconsistent with reflected solar radiation. Internal source suspected. Another: if maneuver is intentional, classification must exceed protocol level. Most stunning was the partially restored final entry. We recommend cessation of public tracking reports until determination of origin is completed. Although the document lacked context, its phrasing strongly implied that the agency not only recognized anomalous behavior, but considered it sensitive enough to warrant withholding information from the public. Digital timestamps indicated the file had been created in late November 1975, days before all records were sealed. This discovery reignited interest among independent analysts, some of whom attempted to model the hypothetical propulsion system AE-11 Delta would require to produce its precise maneuvers. Their simulations suggested a mechanism capable of micro-thrust adjustments with negligible thermal output, far beyond any technology available at the time. If the asteroid was a vessel, it was either abandoned, automated, or operating under principles unknown to modern engineering. Meanwhile, scattered accounts from retired personnel hinted that shortly after the object's disappearance, an unmarked aircraft arrived at the main facility, carrying a delegation of individuals who bypassed all security checkpoints. No one knew their affiliation. They met with project leaders for 6 hours, after which all staff were briefed that the project had been terminated due to budget reallocation. Within days, the facility's archive room was cleared, furniture replaced, and even wall fixtures swapped out. This extreme sanitizing suggested a desire not only to hide information, but to erase the space where information once existed. The digital archaeologists, who uncovered the corrupted file, concluded that Project Asteroid-11 was not a scientific failure but a controlled erasure. Whether the object was artificial, or simply an unprecedented natural anomaly, cannot be confirmed. What can be confirmed is that it exhibited behaviors that frightened the only people who witnessed them, and that those people were quickly, systematically silenced. Whatever AE-11 Delta was, and whatever message it carried across the dark, someone decided humanity was not meant to receive it.